When it comes down to having extra money, what do you do with it? Where do you start? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com. Just go up to the top of the page. There is a link. Just click through, and I will get your question answered. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Let's talk a little bit about getting some extra money, having that extra lump sum of money show up. Could come from a lot of different sources, and basically you're free to do with that whatever you would like to do with that, and nobody's telling you what to do. It's not qualified money or IRA money or retirement money, so it doesn't have to go into a specific type of an account. It is literally cash, and it may be that you just freed up you paid some debt off, you freed up some money on a monthly basis, or you just happen to, maybe you got an inheritance, who knows what it could come from, but you have a lump sum of money and you need to know what to do with it. I had someone send me an email asking this very question, and they own 2 or 3 different businesses, and they have loans out on a couple of the businesses, and then of course they have their mortgage. So the question to me was, what do we pay off first with this extra money that we have? They've got a heart for getting out of debt. I've known them for a long time. And so I suggested to them, one was at 6 or 7%, one was at about 6%, the other was the home mortgage was at 2.8%. Now, out of the 3, the mortgage at 2.8% was a manageable rate because it was so low. And they looked at that as, well, we could pay that off, and that would be one that we don't have to worry about anymore. We can go work on the other 2. But there's a rule of thumb when it comes to, I think, doing it the right way, and I'll explain to you when that rule is not valid. But if you're in a situation where you're choosing between debts to pay off, always pay off the highest interest rate debt. Especially very important in their situation when the bulk of for two reasons, when the bulk of their debt is in higher interest rate debt, and that's just going to cost more. I mean, the higher the interest rate, the more it's going to cost you to hold the money and have interest paid against it as a debt. So the best place to go would be the highest interest rate, which was the one was called the one business, and then once they get that paid off, by having extra money to pay towards it, they'll go to the second one. The very last they'll pay off is the mortgage, and sitting at 2.8%. Because that mortgage, you got to look at your total debt picture, and you got to look at what your average cost of debt or average interest rate is. Well, that 2.8% brings those other 2 debts down as far as the average goes because it's so low. So that's probably about the lowest I've heard on a mortgage, 2.8%. But the good thing is that through the years they've been fortunate enough to have these lump sums of money to pay off, and they've always gone towards the debt, which is a good thing to do. But rule of thumb, the higher interest rates always. Now, when that may not be appealing, and there's some financial advisors in the media that would say, well, if you pay off the smallest debt first, which would have been the mortgage, then you have a feeling of accomplishment, and that should increase the motivation to pay off the bigger debts. And I get that. you just got to know that the least expensive way to go is to pay off the debt based on the highest interest rate first and get that paid off. In fact, I think that Dave Ramsey promotes the balance method, and there's a name for it. It's escaping me right now. But that's the way that I would go after it and make sure that that gets paid off. Got another question that came in about on the same topic, talking about mortgages and what's the quickest way to pay off a mortgage. And there is a way that you can look into. It's called a biweekly mortgage. And basically what you do is you make biweekly payments. And I remember being just getting in the business in the early 90s. And I think that they were just starting to be introduced, these biweekly payment programs. And what's interesting about those programs is that you really didn't need the services of someone to do it exactly on a biweekly basis. So what ends up happening is, just to explain the program, you end up paying one extra mortgage per year, because there's 2 months out of the year that the mortgage would pay an extra biweekly payment if you're paying every 2 weeks. And by the time you get to the end of the year, you've made one extra payment. So what's that do to your mortgage on a 30-year mortgage? Well, what it does, it takes the 30 down to about 23. That's pretty significant just for making one payment a year. Now, like I said, I've seen some of these programs that they are partnering with banks, and there's like a $200 setup fee and there's a transaction fee. You could do this yourself just by making an extra payment a year. It's just the law of math. It's pretty black and white. You're not going to get as quickly, but we're talking, I think the last time I looked at it, we're talking a difference of 3 and 4 months or something like that. I mean, it was not anything significant. In fact, when you add it up, if you would have taken the $200 and added up all the transaction charges and paid that back to your mortgage, I think that you actually would have come back better than having them deduct that biweekly payment. The other thing too is that I don't particularly like banks going into my bank account and deducting money. I love the rule, and I love the method, and looking at it from a biweekly standpoint, paying that extra. In fact, the best way to do it would be to take that payment, say it's $1,200, and pay an extra $100 a month, and just keep that going, and you'll be shocked how it all works. But it is a great way to do things. Next question that has come in talks about, do I invest into a house fund, or do I put extra money into my house and pay the mortgage off? And this is an interesting question, and I am definitely pretty committed to one side of this question. The strategy is that do you take, let's say, an extra $500 and invest it and invest it for, say, 15, 20 years until it hopefully accumulates enough money to where you can take that money that you've accumulated in that investment account and pay off your mortgage, versus if you have an extra $500, just pay down on the mortgage. The only thing that I don't like about using investments that way is that if you just happen to be in the wrong part of what we call the cycle, where the market's going into a bad cycle, that's going to could take a big chunk of your house payment, the house accumulation fund, we'll call it, away from you through investment loss. So I'm probably going to be more on the side of not taking that risk and just paying off and the mortgage, and either increase my payment on a monthly basis or make lump sum payments towards it, whatever works the best. But I think that is the best way to pay off a mortgage versus taking money and putting it into risk. I mean, at the end of the day, contrary to what some people will tell you, that the house is an investment, and you might as well use investment dollars to pay it off. And you could look at it that way. I look at it as the house is shelter, and you want to get that paid off because it ends up being a liability in retirement. And the whole goal is to get to retirement without liabilities. And because at the end of the day, you got to have more money set aside to pay off those liabilities. So, but that's my opinion. That there's obviously more than one way to go about doing a lot of these things. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We're talking about priorities of extra money. That moment that you get the extra $1,000 a month or $500 a month because you paid something off, or you get the lump sum of money that doesn't have to go into an IRA or a qualified retirement plan that can be used however you want to use it. And it's first of all, what a great direction to go to take it to pay off debt. And that's what the message behind most of these answers is going to be, is to pay off debt and get debt free as soon as possible. But if you got any questions for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send them in. I will get your questions answered. Always like to do so. When you're on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about emergency fund and when you should be taking care of that with any extra money. And we'll take care of that. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back. Hi, my name is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. So let me ask you a question. Do you know your numbers? Now, which numbers are those? They are your retirement numbers. That set of numbers is the single most important planning numbers you can know. Yet the majority of Americans don't even know them. Prudent Money Financial Services, sponsor of the Prudent Money Radio Show, specializes in figuring out those numbers and creating a game plan to make sure you're on the right track. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show weekdays at 3 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Hi, I'm Jill Taylor, inviting you to join me each Saturday morning at 11 o'clock for Choose Life Radio. You'll hear people from across America sharing their stories of faith, forgiveness, redemption, and restoration. Choose Life Radio will encourage you to fully appreciate the gift of life. You may also find help for you or a friend in need. So please join me Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock right here on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. If you have a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com and send that question in, and I will get that question taken care of for you. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. What about an emergency fund? Do you work to build that up over time? I mean, how should you approach that? The way that I look at an emergency fund is it's almost as that's somewhat of a sacred part of your overall financial picture. Most people don't look at it that way. Most people look at it as just, it's kind of like putting tires on your car. It's something that you don't want to have to do, but you know you need to do it. And it's that account that doesn't make a whole lot of money, but it is such an important account because you're probably guaranteed to have to use it at some point. And the rule of thumb is if you don't have an emergency fund built up, then you're probably using credit cards to pay whatever debt, whatever liability is there, and then create debt at a high interest rate. So one of the things that I always talk about when it comes to emergency funds is that when you first get out of school, wherever that, meaning that's high school or meaning that's college, and you get that first real 40-hour-a-week job, you're getting paid a salary. I would suggest that before even, and there's people who will disagree with this, but I still think it makes the most sense, that before you start putting money back in the 401k plan, with a caveat, which I'll get to in a minute, I would start to build that that emergency fund right away. And I would get that emergency fund up to about, if you're just starting out, up to $4,000 to $5,000. It's really depends on how much cash you want to accumulate. But some of the emergencies that could come up are you've happened to buy a house, maybe you're not renting, maybe you're one of the lucky ones that ended up being able to buy a house, and you're just getting started. Anything can break in that house, and so that would be part of the emergency fund. You could also look at it as if you lost your job, how much money would you need to live on for, say, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever you feel comfortable with, having that amount of money put back. And then health insurance. You have you have an unexpected health issue, and you have to pay the deductible and the cost and the co-insurance. And so if you really look at that, that could end up being a $15,000 to $20,000 total emergency fund, which would be ideal. So the only thing that my disclaimer is on the 401k, if you, well, first of all, let me back up and say this. The emergency fund, without question, is still the superior place to put money to get that built up. Very priority number one. But if you do have a situation where you've got where you have a match, an employer match like we've been talking about, you definitely want to participate in that match. I mean, it's free money. If you say they're going to give you dollar for dollar up to $3 for dollar up to match your contributions up to a 3% match, then if you don't take advantage of that, then you're just throwing free money away. So make sure that you consider that into your situation. But once again, if you had the ability to borrow that money out, in the worst cases of a situation, you could do it, but that's not a great way to start off a 401k plan. Emergency fund, though, very biased when it comes to that and making sure that you got that put back. I would really wonder what the landscape of credit card debt would look like had everybody had an emergency fund. And so that is something to consider. Well, the next scenario involves you getting a lump sum of money. Your friends know about it. Maybe some of your relatives know about it. And one approaches you and says, hey, Jim, I know that you just got an X amount of dollars, and I got a great investment for you. And the friend proceeds to tell him that he's got a debt, and the debt is, the way it's set up now, is almost impossible for him to pay off. And if he could get a loan, he could make him a lot of money and get this debt satisfied. On the surface, it looks like somewhat of a good thing, because you could lower the payments on the debt as the friend. It looks like, I'm saying this from the friend standpoint. You could lower the payments on the debt for them, and surely they'd pay him back. I mean, everybody's got good intentions when it comes right down to it. And it looks like a good place to put some of this extra money. So you loan the money to the friend, and all of a sudden the friend misses a payment, misses another payment, and you've got a real problem on your hands. The rule of thumb, and I believe this biblically speaking as well, the bottom line with a loan is if you're going to loan money to a friend, consider it a gift. If they pay it back, it's just a bonus, but consider it a gift because of the damage to the relationship that it will definitely cause. And even then, if it's given as a gift, that could still cause damage to a relationship without question. So if you can't do that, if you can't bring yourself to saying, if you never, you don't have to tell your friend this, but if you're about to loan the money and you're thinking, well, realistically, if you never paid the money back, I'm not going to have any ill feelings towards you. I want to help you out with no strings attached. Then that's the way to go. And you've got to look at it this way, that the person lending the money to the friend is the lender of last resort, which means that you are it. They can't even get a high interest rate note. They can't even get a note that's paying 35% in interest. I mean, that's charging 35% in interest. So you are it. And just want to make sure that that's the risk of, and that's the problem with debt to begin with, is that I think everybody has the good intentions of paying it back, but until a person changes their habits to where they are, the same set of habits that got you into debt are not going to be the same habits to get you out of debt. You've got to literally transform the way that you think about money to get a debt paid off if you've gotten yourself into a situation where there's a lot of it. So just remember, it's a high risk, very, very high risk loan situation when a friend comes to you. So just remember, gift first, loan second. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com, and we'll get you taken care of. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, how do I manage cash when it comes to retirement? So picture this, and I've been through this situation many times with clients, is that they're sitting down and they're getting their retirement accounts organized. And they end up with this bucket of cash more times than not, just money they've saved over the many, many, many years and haven't touched. And it's significant. It may be in an account that's not earning much. Of course, today, high yield money markets make roughly in the 4th percentile range, but they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And the first thing that I always say is that a part of a good retirement plan is a retirement plan that has an oversized emergency fund in it. Cash is going to always be important. And the other thing too, if you have the ability to have what I call an oversized emergency fund, you might be able to buy your pay for your next vehicle out of that. There's definitely a house, any type of a house problem can get paid easily, and health insurance deductibles and that sort of thing can get paid. So an oversized emergency account will take care of most things. But most people don't look at it that way. They don't look at that as part of a retirement plan, and it is without question a part of a retirement plan. The second thing that you ought to, when you look at all the components of your, the accounts and all that type of thing, and assuming that it's all liquid, that you can put your hands on it, you can also consider everything that you have as a part of the emergency fund. If you've got an emergency fund, you want to go there first. But if you don't, and you have plenty of money in an IRA, well, you can always go and get money out of the IRA if you need to. What I see some people do, and it's something I wouldn't do, is I'll see people take out extra money on a monthly basis in order to save money. Well, once you get to retirement, your saving days are over, I believe. and you start with what you've got and you go from there. So just kind of keep that in mind as a good way to manage cash in retirement when it comes down to what to do with it and how to handle it. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you got a question for me, you can always go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Go to the top of the page, go through the link, send it in, and I will get you taken care of, because today we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.